So, for my microculture project, I chose Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons, or D&D for short, is a multiplayer tabletop role-playing game. It is developed by Wizards of the Coast Studios and was first released in 1974 by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. While it's difficult to get the accurate statistics on the data for player base, it's estimated that about 5 million people play it worldwide, and it is currently believed to be the largest role-playing game played, and it's rapidly growing. In 2017, it's the company that produces Dungeons and Dragons, Wizards of the Coast, saw their biggest sales ever in their history, and so it's not going away anytime soon. It's growing, and it has very specific values, traits, and characteristics that set it apart from the larger culture. Some values that Dungeons and Dragons players have: time management. In order to play Dungeons and Dragons, you first need to set up a window, usually of about 5 hours, once a week usually, where you can manage to get everyone involved with it to play. This can usually take some haggling, and it usually is not something that comes easily at but gets better and better as time goes on. So time management is very valued in the Dungeons and Dragons community. Creativity. The people playing want to be able to experience original ideas and stories, so they don't really want to be doing the same thing they've done 1,000 times before. As well as that, story writing is very valuable. You want to make an engaging story, or you want to play in an engaging story if you are a part of this community. The ability to think on your feet, various problems that need solving need to be solved quickly in Dungeons and Dragons, and so the ability to think on your feet is valuable, and it's desired in players. And of course, teamwork and problem solving. So teamwork is one of the big things about Dungeons and Dragons. You get together with a bunch of your friends and you solve problems together. There's no one person who solves it and everyone else is just along for the ride, and so that's why people like it so much. It helps foster teamwork and the community. Really, anyone interested in playing the game can join. Stereotypically, it's often thought of being just adolescent males, but many women and people of all ages and creeds play. In addition, those who play D&D are often thought of as socially inept, but there have been studies linking Dungeons and Dragons to better social skills and problem-solving skills. And it's played by over 5 million people, as I said, so the range of people is very wide, and it's certainly not limited to the stereotype. While there are some people who match the stereotype, of course, it's not just that. Certain characteristics that players have are imagination, because you have to be able to picture the setting in your mind, or else you're just not going to have fun. The ability to play along, if something sounds hokey, just play along, you'll get into it. Teamwork, you want to be able to work with your team. You don't want to be dragging people along or trying to go off and do things by yourself. It's seen as bad sportsmanlike, or unsportsmanlike rather. Adaptability, you want to be able to think on your feet both in and out of the game. If people can't play at a certain time, well, you gotta move it to a different time. And of course, problem solving. Behavior and communication. So as I mentioned, storytelling is an important behavior. Improvisation and thinking on your feet. Role-playing is a big behavior, and of course, the rules of the game are very important. There's a diverse and very, very complex set of rules for playing the game, which can often put new players off, but it's mostly just guidelines for what can and cannot happen depending on what occurs and what players can and cannot do. These rules are mostly clarifications, but there are probably thousands of them, and people who play sometimes can take them very, very seriously. And a very important skill with Dungeons and Dragons is being able to read people. You want to be able to know how the people at the game are reacting to a certain situation to see whether or not they're having fun, because that's really the most important thing. It's not about telling a story or anything like that. It's about making sure people have fun, and that's, telling a story helps enhance the fun. So, and of course it has its own very specific language that is common to the community and is not very recognizable by people outside of it. For example, some of the things you might be able to understand from context. For instance, a session is just any time where people get together and play D&D. A campaign is multiple sessions that occupy the same story and the same characters. In a session, there is a party, that is the players at the table, the physical people and the characters they play. But there's also other terms. For example, a PC and an NPC. A PC is a player character, someone actually at the table. An NPC is a non-player character, so someone that is being characterized by the DM or Dungeon Master, who basically tells the story to everyone else. In addition, there's also a TPK, a total party kill, where all the party dies in one go. A crit fail, which is just doing very well, or doing very poorly. And there's much more language that's very specific to Dungeons and Dragons. On to facts. Dungeons and Dragons has recently gained popularity with the creation of large, high-budget sessions, similar in scale to like a TV show, like filmed in front of a live studio audience. This includes productions such as Critical Role, which is hosted by famous voice actor Matthew Mercer, and there's also Harmon Quest, which is hosted by show creator and writer Dan Harmon. Director Jon Favreau he's a Hollywood director. He credits Dungeons and Dragons. He says that it gave him, quote, a really strong background in imagination, storytelling, understanding how to create a tone and sense of balance. So that's why some people might get value out of Dungeons and Dragons. They might be able to see how it might be able to improve their writing. Here's another fact. In the 1980s, throughout certain parts of the U.S., there was a certain phenomenon known as the Satanic Panic, where many aspects of the culture at the time that were seen as niche or sort of weird were deemed as not just weird or niche, but satanic, where doing something was a means of communicating with Satan and was an attempt by some large sinister organization to adopt children and baptize them into Satanism. And Dungeons and Dragons, with its mentions of monsters and the occult and its sort of enclosed niche setting, was swept up in that. And for a while, Dungeons and Dragons was seen as communicating with the devil, which I find pretty silly, but it happened. And Dungeons and Dragons has also become very popular in American prisons, where players will go to extensive lengths to make their own dice, or perhaps use spinners or a deck of cards to substitute for dice, which are often contraband, because prisons don't want their prisoners gambling, so they ban the dice, but players often find a way around that. In conclusion, Dungeons and Dragons is a very specific microculture with values, characteristics, and behaviors such as imagination, storytelling, role-playing, improvisation, and teamwork that are set apart from the larger culture as a whole and qualifies them as a microculture. Thank you very much for watching.